It's Brian FitzGerald, the Sky Surfer, back with another POV movie. Don't worry about that final flight stuff, though. I'll explain that later. But do remember that it's magic time every time you're getting airtime, and that's what this movie's about. Usually I'm goal-oriented and I've got some place I want to go, but this time it was just to catch some bodacious air and be there, right? Break time, gotta sky surf for a little bit. Dudes, those of you who are purists, I think will particularly enjoy magic time. My goal here was to show the perfect fun flight in perfect air at the perfect time of day. Now, I'm not sure I really hit that target, but I figure if you aim for the stars, you'll at least hit the moon. Well, that's the premise, so now let's see what you think. Mahalo. As the Sky Surfer finishes donning his helmet in preparation for flight, we see that the sun is low in the west. This is key to today's mission and a hint as to the title. But before I get into all that, let's shuttle ahead and grab some air. Scripture teaches that there's a time for every season. A right time to plant, a proper time to harvest, a time for love and a time for war, all that sort of thing. These are some of the explicit items in the list. But in addition to the obvious, there's always the implicit, the unsaid, the understood that we draw from the emphatic message. So, when pondering this section of Ecclesiastes, it occurred to me that this truth might be inherent in a conceptual term, widely used in, of all places, Hollywood.
Whoa! What are you, nuts?
Well, I don't think so. I'll connect the dots in a minute, but first I must digress. You see, years ago when I first got involved in making news stories and documentaries and TV commercials, we used to talk a lot about motivated effects. The theory is that different visual effects, and it also applies to audio effects, have their own inherent psychological message or meaning that was learned by viewers, or better yet, naturally perceived by the human mind. An example of what I'm talking about is the simple dissolve like this, which is generally used to connote a change of time or place. Then there is the cut, like these. Cut is the equivalent of a blinking eye. It takes you from one angle or focal length within a scene in a manner that the human eye quickly darts around to take the measure of a location. Another effect is called a wipe, like these. There are loads of wipes. Way too many, really. Wipes draw more attention to themselves, but are in the like manner of a dissolve, and are used to connote a change of time or place. A well-known specialized wipe is the clock wipe, invented to really drive home the passage of time. The 1980s advent of the MTV music video obliterated the concept of motivated effects. In order to make interesting some acts that were frankly lacking in visual appeal, directors took to spicing up music videos with any and all effects to the point where often the effect became the movie. Because of this, people who haven't taken the time to learn the art of movie making probably don't even know what I'm talking about or care. That's why about 95% of music videos and a lot of TV commercials are basically an effect looking for a purpose. Take them away and it's like Toto and Dorothy discovering the humbug Wizard of Oz hiding behind the curtain.
Blah, blah, blah. Are you kidding? Who is this fool?
Hey, calm down. Don't throw anything. I suppose you got me. This could appear to be an overly erudite cover for that opening segment that I did for this piece. I mean, Sky Surfer appearing on the sides of cloud-filled boxes flying through space. I guess really has nothing to do with this movie. I just thought the effect was kind of neat to look at, and I knew how to make it, so I did it.
All right.
Okay, if this rambling discourse on movie effects and the meager attempt at humor wasn't entertaining, at least I hope it was instructive. Before I could get down to ultralight flight level 100 and below, I needed to cross the highway and houses to get out in the countryside. So this allowed you the opportunity to see for yourself that POV from 500 feet or more is not that interesting. Maybe good for 30 seconds here, 30 seconds there, but that's why I fly so low in these movies and why we will be descending soon. But before that, I know you have all been patiently waiting for me to explain the title and close the loop on all that jive about unmotivated effects, etc. That's fair. So here's the high concept. First, magic time. It's a term long used in Hollywood to describe the visually pleasant effect attained from the sun's lighting just before, at, and around sunset. It's not a guaranteed happening, but if the clouds don't mess you up, you usually get a more dramatic, interesting look during magic time. I'd call it a natural special effect, if you will, driven by the natural beauty of creation, but strictly limited by time and circumstance and therefore valuable. It's about a 30 to 45 minute window of opportunity that doesn't avail itself all that often because of the need for the different elements to come together at the same time. Then there's the second part of the title, Final Flight, which glances off the explanation I just made. You see, a couple of months prior to this shoot, I had developed an interesting surface track for this POV that I'm hoping will give you lots of visual appeal. To top it off, I decided it would be greatly enhanced to shoot it at magic time. Well, that's all fine and good, but the Sky Surfer is not the arbiter of all things cinematic. I tried and tried to no avail. Sometimes the wind was too high, sometimes the cameras didn't cooperate. One time I had a maintenance issue that scratched a flight. I initiated a couple of runs under marginal cloud conditions, hoping things would turn favorable as I flew, but these came up wanting. I'll tell you, God has given me a fair measure of willpower, but even that can fall short. During situations such as I endured, I think of those posters in the 1970s with the buzzards up in the tree saying to each other, "Patience, heck, I'm gonna kill something." But I just don't have that luxury. So, with the season coming to a close and failure up to that point, I had decided that this final flap of the wings you are watching right now would be the last effort. At least that year. It was do or die. Well, let's don't use that word. Let's say it was do or don't. And so now you know why this is called Magic Time Final Flight. Frankly, all that being said, I probably chose the title because the Sky Surfer knew it would get your attention. So hey, we're down on the deck now. Let's fly the track for a while and hear some music. let's keep going, huh? was a fun river run and really the heart of this flight, but we're smack dab in the middle of magic time and still have a few items to check off on the way back. We'll hit the high points. I have passed over this unique terraced field many times. I really like the way the farmer has sculpted it for maximum utility but still left a nice tree row in place. Now you can see the full benefit of magic time as tones of the earth and crops breathe like at no other time. You might notice that I've killed the music and brought up the engine noise. I get a number of irate messages from non-paying customers complaining that they would rather hear the motor than the music. So this is for y'all. Understand though that what you are really hearing is my power fin prop, which I've isolated by microphone choice and considerable EQ work. The motor sounds like a chainsaw on steroids, and it is singing loud a mere 3 feet from my head. Without the helmet, extra sound deadening pads glued into my helmet to shield my ears, and 33 dB earplugs, I would be deaf. Believe me, you don't want to hear the engine. The prop sounds pretty good though. For those of you who did like the last couple of tunes, the one called Bryan and Bridge and Nothing Happens, it's a bit of a departure for me. Usually I write the whole tune, play the guitars and bass, and then drop in some drums. This time I bought a package from some guys. It's a software system that allows you to time exactly how long you want something to be, and then you buy these different compositions that they have. They lay down the tracks, and you can mix them however you want. Here, let's take a break for a second and check out this short little river run. So anyway, back to the discussion on the music. I decided to call this genre guitar karaoke. It was a bit difficult for me because I wasn't used to those styles, and I had to really dig deep. I don't even know where that solo came from in Bridge. I mean, I keep listening to that and thinking, man, that's the best thing you've done in years. I think they turned out pretty good. I call this the wildlife area. I guarantee you there are deer hiding all over this place. Unfortunately, they're hiding right now. Okay, as we all remember from earlier in this sky safari, a dissolve like this one connotes a passage of time and or place, and that's what's happening. I had to climb to a polite altitude in order to pass over some farmsteads, and it got a little boring, visually anyway, for about 5 minutes, so I decided to skip that part. But now we are back on the deck, approaching an interesting feature I'm calling the corn tunnel. Some might see it as merely a drainage area to keep the corn from getting wet feet, but I think corn tunnel has a more interesting ring to it. I hadn't seen it before this flight, but the moment I did, I grabbed the opportunity to zing down it. My desire was to see how low I could get below the corn tops without touching the landing gear or grazing the wings. Next, as we continue our journey, we will check out a prominent fixture on the plains, the ubiquitous center pivot irrigation device. occasionally known as water wheel or circle irrigation. You've seen a few already in this run. Then we will crown them all with the pièce de résistance irrigator, the rainbow pivot. Well, I didn't say it was a big rainbow, but if you looked inside the spray of the pivot, it was pretty evident. Looked pretty cool to me anyway. You know, after all that build-up and maybe let down, I noticed that I have a way better one coming up. This mixes magic time and pivot and everything. Check it out. Well, as you can see from this angle, we are now in the narrow band, the most attractive remaining moments of the entire magic time. The shadows are long, the sun is emitting a golden hue, and although you can't see it, the air has smoothed out also. Magic time on a magic carpet. On evenings like this, you can fly the ultralight without touching the controls, just by leaning your body. The best 15 minutes of the day. As it happened this evening, and happens about every time I return to the field, I'm not ready to land yet. The path I had laid out for this movie had brought me back to the aerodrome with fuel to spare and magic time still ticking. You don't expect the sky surfer to just land, do you? Of course not. Flying is always better than not flying. So naturally, I have discovered a few spots near the field that I save for occasions just like this. Let's check them out. How do you like that? So anyway, in honor of this fine evening, I decided to write a little tune. And I'm going to call it Acoust-O-Magic. Now, I'm not trying to say that my playing is magic. And it did start out as an acoustical tune, but I just kept layering stuff on. It seemed like a suitable sound for the end of a nice day of flying. So here's the song. Check it out. One, two, three. was magic time, and I hope you enjoyed it. This is Brian FitzGerald wishing you blue skies and tailwinds. See you next time. Mahalo.